Hello everyone, and welcome to another 3D Buzz MMO development video. In this video we've got Mr. Lee Renaud.
Hello.
Hello, and myself, Jason Busby. Now, right now we're still in the story development phase. As a matter of fact, we've done the initial story proposal and we've done a couple class meetings, and we have been working on iteration 1, Zach, Lee, and myself, and have made some pretty amazing progress, and we're getting pretty close to having another class meeting to share iteration 1 with everyone. But at the same time, while we are progressing forward, we are doing some parallel development, some research and development, and that's what we're going to share a little bit with you right now. Lee's been doing some terrain stuff. Now in this video, what Lee's going to do is demonstrate a test framework that he likes to use when he's back at the house for testing out new features. Quite often I'm asking Lee to, hey, test this, or I've got an idea that I think will work pretty well, but if you could get some time and code this in and give it a shot, let me know. And having all of these different tests that Lee needs to do, and there's a lot of base functionality that's almost always required for these tests. Lee basically put together a very simple framework so that the tests could be brought up quickly and demonstrate it, see if they work or not, without him going in and wasting time coding other stuff. Is that pretty accurately?
Yeah, it is. It was like we did a lot of the code over and over again every time we did a new demo, and I just got tired of typing the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, well, it's just not being very productive. So in this video, Lee is going to walk through what he set up and uses for, well, a basic demo framework for testing out features. And then we've got another video coming up where Lee's kind of our terrain expert around here, and he's been experimenting with some new stuff with generating our own terrains instead of using the Unity terrain system, because it does give us some really nice advantages that we'll talk about in the other video. But anyways, that's coming up next. But before we get into that good stuff, we need to get this framework in place. And since we're really wanting to try to capture as much as we possibly can in the MMO class, we need to do this. Now, Lee has already got a project set up, and you've got some folders in place, and I believe they're pretty much empty with the exception of the main scene being saved out. Yeah. Go ahead and share with everyone why you've set them up the way you have.
Okay, well, first off, the obvious thing that you're going to notice is there are underscores in front of my top-level folders. I do this as a matter of convention just to make sure that my folders that are at the top level always end up at the top of the project hierarchy. Mm-hmm. I get tired of having assets mixed up and things not in alphabetical order with, some assets mixed in with my folders. It drives me crazy. So I use underscores to make sure that they stay up on top.
Okay.
Now, the one most people are going to recognize as scenes. It's just to put my scene in, and I've saved this out as demo. Nothing fancy there. If you've ever used Unity, hopefully you have, you know what that is.
Sure.
Now, the ones that are a little bit different is I have scripts. Now, I have a specific folder called scripts, and this is where I like to keep things that are inheriting from mono behaviors.
Okay.
So I like to have my mono behaviors in one structure, and then everything that isn't a mono behavior in a different folder structure. Now, the different folder structure that I'm talking about is this underscore code base folder. This is where I put everything that isn't a mono behavior. Now, under here, I've got a demo framework folder and a demos folder. Now, my demo framework folder is where I put the base functionality to for all of my demos.
Okay, so basically something that you'd want to carry over to any demo that you were doing, you would have that shared code, if you will, in there.
Right, and inside of there I have yet another folder called features. Now my features folder, so basically demo framework has the base functionality for the framework, the demo framework, but I like adding things called features. Now features are things that I want to have available to me in every demo that I work with. So in this video, what I'm going to be showing you is a way of locking the mouse cursor. So the moment you left or right click inside of the game window, you lock the cursor to that window so you can't accidentally move the cursor outside of the window, and it maintains focus of the cursor until you hit the escape key. That is something that I'd like to have in every single one of my demos.
Okay.
But I don't want to have to code that functionality in every single demo. So I put it in my features list.
Okay, and you know, before you get started, Lee, let me remind everybody, and we have said this numerous times as we worked our way up to the class. Everything we're shooting right now, we're shooting from the hip, meaning recording. Okay. This is a very relaxed environment. If Lee screws anything up or if I screw anything up, we're just going to roll with it. Otherwise, it would be a 20,000 hour long course by the time we got done. I just want to remind everyone that, again, we're recording from the hip, okay? So this is just, we're just going with it.
Right. And along that line, these are R&D demos. This is not game code. This isn't the stuff that you're going to see inside of the game.
That's right.
Some of the stuff could get there, but this isn't going to necessarily be the most optimized stuff you've ever seen.
Right. Actually, what you're starting with right now is just simply a test bed. So,
right.
All right. Where do we want to start?
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get the initial mono behavior fired off. That way we can get the mono or the Visual Studio project built and opened. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new C# script. And I'm going to rename this one Game Manager. This is going to be my initial hook into pretty much everything.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is right-click, Sync Mono Develop Project. Visual Studio is going to open up after it builds the project. So give it a sec. It'll open. I promise. Maybe.
I was going to say maybe because it's not always a guarantee when you go to sync like that. Sometimes it just does its little thing and then goes away. Sometimes it'll
especially
open
with
up.
2010.
See, hang on, loading cache, blah, 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 and then, ta-da.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah.
I'm crossing. My fingers are crossed. You can't see it.
No, it's done. You need to go ahead and double-click it now.
Look at that.
And it's coming. There she goes.
Yeah.
All right, so jumping on inside here.
Right. First thing, clean this up. So we're going to name this Game Manager. We want it to be mono behavior. I like my curly braces on their own lines. That's just me. And I don't like spaces after my method. Again, just the way I like to work. And for those of you that haven't seen my code and aren't used to it, you'll get used to it. I hate green things in my code. So we'll get rid of those. Ask Jason, he knows.
Yeah, I'm generally yelling at Lee all the time, but since this is his test framework here, I'm not going to say anything. That's fine.
Well, there's a little bit more functionality I want to add in here, so I'm going to put in awake. And come down here and put in on GUI.
So you're basically hooking into some of the
Mono
major,
behaviors.
some of the major calls that get made from within a mono behavior.
So these are the ones I usually use the most, so I'm just going to put them in here for now. Now, some of you purists may think, well, if you're not using it, why put it in there? This is just to speed up my workflow. Like I said, this is not a high performance application. It's just so I can play with whatever Jason throws my way. I believe so. But you know. All right, so we got those base functionality in. Go ahead and build it and jump back over here. So now I've got my game manager script, but I only have the main camera. I like to create an empty game object and call it game manager, and then put it at the center of the world, and then drag my game manager script to it. And the script file name does not match.
No, jump back over to
manager. That was completely an IntelliSense fault. It wasn't mine at all.
Fair enough.
So, you know. So let's try that again. There we go. All right, so now I've got a game manager. It doesn't do anything, but it's all hooked up. All right, now we need to put some stuff into the framework. Now I'm going to switch back over to Visual Studio, start expanding out some of these folders. So right now, I don't see my other folders because I don't have anything in them. So let's put some stuff in them. So come up to Demo Framework. I'm going to right-click, create C#. And I'm going to do another one for demos here. I'm just putting these in as placeholders for the moment, just so when I switch back in the Visual Studio and reload, I get my folders. So I should have my code base. There's Game Manager. Now I've got demo in here. So let's open up this one. Now the first thing I want to do is create an interface. So I'll clean up this. This is not going to be a mono behavior. And I need a namespace. And this is going to be the code base demo framework, or no, this is going to be just code base. No, demo framework.
Yeah, go ahead and take that one away from up there. There you go.
And this won't be a class, this will be an interface. And we're going to name this iDemo. Now, let's go ahead. I'll just nuke it, type it. So we're going to create a void awake. Void update. Oh, forgot void start. I'll just put on GUI in here. And void on application quit. Kind of sucks not being a touch typer.
Yeah, I'm watching you finger peck, kind of making me flinch a little, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I can type pretty fast.
Yeah, you can.
Only using
For finger
3 fingers.
pecking, yeah, that's true.
So, all right. So this gives us our interface, which we're going to use to derive all of our demos later.
Now, yeah, let me go ahead and throw this in there real quick. For those of you that at some point, when I finally get the time to record the advanced simple game, this is a framework here that somewhat came from that. Unless I end up changing things at a later point in time. I had taken Simple Game, which for many of you out there that saw the original Simple Game that was done, and you know that I was working on a more advanced one. That one was a 2D space shooter that Casey Jones had originally come up with and demonstrated how to put together in JavaScript. Well, in taking Simple Game forward for the next iteration, one of the things that I was demonstrating is how you could have multiple simple games in one Unity game. And so there was an interface, a public interface being defined as iGame, and each of your games, your main game script, if you will, would all implement iGame. And then one of the things in iGame that was required to be defined or implemented was the handling of menu options and stuff like that. So the neat thing is through reflection you could then have your game manager go in and find all of your games that's within this one game, and then create a menu using again what's defined with each person for handling how they are going to draw their little menu item. And then you could go through and select which game you want to play. And with the simple game, it was the 2D space shooter, and I was giving a Pong example. So this is how you could put 2 games, but you could have multiples. And Lee and I had talked about this a while back, and Lee said, well, you know, it's not a bad idea to do something like this in the test bed, because Lee had a similar test bed also that was being used with the MMO tech demo that we did. Because again, I was asking Lee, hey, could you troubleshoot or you know, experiment with this new spell idea, and to try to implement the spell inside the massive MMO code base was you know, it just wasn't very feasible. It was best to work inside of a very stripped down simple test bed, and then once it was working well, we just simply moved the spell over and it just worked, which was fantastic. So Lee had put something very similar like this together. Now, there are those of you out there that may be thinking, well, instead of having each primary feature or demo that you're wanting to demonstrate or put together to R&D on inside this this project, couldn't you just have a main script that inherits from mono behavior and drag that on to your game manager as well, where the game manager would handle all of the common features that you wanted in place for every single demo, such as the mouse feature that Lee was just talking about. And then your primary script that you drug on would kind of be the master script into the feature you're R&Ding at the time. And yeah, absolutely. But with Lee doing it this way, there's a few benefits that we get out of it. One, with all of the namespacing, it makes it very easy for us to set up unit testing to go through and test out features as well, features that become very complex, where by getting in there and poking around and changing things out, we may end up breaking functionality, and it could be a place where we want to apply unit testing so that we make sure that methods stay functioning the way they're designed to. Another thing that we get out of it by using this sort of approach is there's now something between the mono behavior world and the POCO world, or the plain old CLR objects, and that is the game manager with the ability to halt a call to awake or start, or the main ones would be controlling or gating if we're going to actually call update or on GUI at particular times. We may actually end up in situations where we don't want to call an update on a feature that we're testing, and by having this game manager act as a middleman between POCO objects and mono behavior objects, we have that ability to control that. I just wanted to throw that out there real quickly, just so people know why you took this approach here.
Well, we have conversations, and I steal whatever you've got a good idea on.
But I just wanted to point out to people that, yeah, they could just do a regular mono behavior and
right.
drag drop over there.
It does add a little bit of overhead, but again, this isn't a full game.
Little.
And the fact that, if we want to do unit testing, everything's broken out into namespaces now, and it's not a mono behavior. So with this one, I'm going to rename the right script. I got to make sure I'm on the right one. So I am currently on this one. So
Yeah, double click it. You'll know for sure.
So there. All right. And let's go ahead and open this one up for now. Let's rename this one. This will be train demo.
Since that's going to be kind of the first thing that you...
Yeah, that's going to be the very first one. Actually, let's skip this one for now.
Okay.
Because that gets into the next video, and I really don't want to code that yet.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, let's go. Well, let's slow down. We'll back up a little bit. But so we've got the iDemo. What I want to do, though, is I want to create another folder in here. So I'm going to add a new folder. And this folder is going to be features. Now, I had mentioned one of the features that I want to implement is the ability...
yeah, you already have a features there. There's nothing in it, so it's just not showing up.
Yeah, because it didn't get built to the project. So we're
we
going to
just
jump back over. And we create another one, C# script, and open it up. And iDemos, I definitely want to make sure, ignore, I want to make sure this gets saved. I don't want to type it again. I'm terrible at typing. So now, is it going to play nice? No, we're going to have to rebuild it.
I was just going to say, we have our own ways that we like to work. And I'm just going to share mine with everyone. Now, I told Lee to go ahead and have the project set up ahead of time just so that you guys out there didn't have to watch Lee say, file, new project, create a folder. But me personally, and I think he's actually going for it.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
like going, well, I did it reverse, and it's going, okay, this is driving me nuts.
I never create my folders when it comes to scripting over in Unity. I always simply create them inside of Visual Studio.
Already exist on the disk.
Yeah, because now it's going to want to give you a little bit of grief with that.
I will fix it eventually. This is why you create them inside of Visual. it's not going to reload. Quiet time.
I would jump back in and jump back over into, yeah, and go ahead and do a Control R just to make sure that a forced refresh has been done. And then, okay, now go ahead and right-click, sync it, and then double-click and see if it may still think it's there. But go ahead and try making the folder. If not, I would just go ahead and shut down Visual Studio
and
reopen it. Yeah, I'd go ahead and kill that out because it's got it written into the solution file at this point.
I know how to fix it.
What?
What's that?
What? You think the folder's still there? No, you're good. I would right-click over there, just tell it to sync, and open it back up.
Well, I was going to make sure it's not there.
No, it's not there. I guarantee you it's not. See, it's not there. They couldn't see that, but it wasn't there, guys.
I was getting the 10-pound hammer out.
Yeah, and once I get to them, double-click it, jump in, you'll be able to create without a problem. All right.
Let's try this again.
Yeah, that'll work fine now.
Yay! All right, add new item. Oh no, we tried this before. Yeah, Nelson, if you're watching this, thank you.
No, just hit Control Alt Insert.
Control Alt and insert.
Insert.
And
it's right above on the. There you go.
So I need a class for this one. So okay, this very first class is going to be mouse lock. All right, namespace, code base, demo framework, features, good. So it's got everything I need.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now what this feature does is when you start playing the game, if you left or right click inside of the play area, it's going to lock that mouse cursor. So it basically the game is capturing your mouse. If you've played a lot of web Unity games or even your own, you've probably run across the problem where if you slide the mouse outside of the game window, the mouse goes to another window, and if you accidentally click, you lose focus on your game, and bad things happen. This script is going to prevent that from happening. The moment you click inside of it, it locks the cursor, and you can't get out of the game until you hit the escape key.
Cool.
So, very handy feature, which is why it's a feature. I want it in every demo I do. So, we're going to start off with adding a property to begin with. It's going to be a public static, and this will be a boolean, and we're going to call this was locked. This is just basically, for some reason, if we lose focus on our game and we come back, this is where we're going to find out whether or not we had locked the cursor or not. And some people might recognize some of this because there was a really good, I think it was inside of Unity Answers, somebody had come up with a solution, and this is based off of that code heavily. So now the next thing we're going to do is create a public static method that is going to return a void, and this is called handle mouse cursor lock, or locking. Now inside of it, we need to see if the player has hit the escape key. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check input. We're going to get key down, and I don't have Unity Engine, so go ahead and add that for me. Get key down, and we're going to look for the escape key. And if we find it, we're going to lock the cursor, we're going to lock the cursor by setting screen.lockCursor to false. Now, we're going to need a couple of methods.
So you said we're going to lock the cursor? We're setting screen.lock cursor.
Oh, we're unlocking.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad. You're right. Come on, what is it? 3 o'clock in the morning now?
Yeah, something like that.
So, right, here we go. So we're going to add two methods, and we're going to come back up to the handle mouse or mouse cursor locking method.
Okay.
So we're going to need two more static methods. These ones are going to be private, so I'm just going to leave it off. This is going to be lock cursor. And another void. This one's going to be unlock cursor. Alright, so now to lock the cursor, we're going to set lock cursor to true. And to unlock it, we set it to false. So now, what we need to do back up in the handle is if we need to check to see if the cursor is locked and if it was locked or not. So what we do is we go if screen lock cursor. So if the cursor is not locked and we were locked, then we're going to set was locked equal to false. So we're basically resetting was locked, and then we're going to unlock the cursor. Now we're going to basically do the reverse of this as well. So I'm going to copy all this code, paste it down here, and we'll turn this to an else if. And I just got to remember what language I'm programming in at the moment. So else if the cursor is locked and we weren't locked, we're going to say was locked is set to true, and then we're going to lock the cursor. Now, the last thing that we need to do is check to see if the player has hit the left or right mouse button inside of the window. So if input, get mouse button down, and we're going to check to see if the left mouse button is down or the right mouse button is down. So if either one of those are down, we're going to lock the cursor. So let me go ahead and build that. Now if I jump back to our game manager and I go to the update, I can tell it to look for mouse look, or mouse lock, not mouse look, and hit Alt Enter. That adds my code-based MMO features, which gives me my mouse lock. So now I can handle mouse locking on every update. So what's going to happen is the game manager, every time we get to an update, because it's mono behavior, it's going to check the handle mouse. So that comes in here, and we're going to see if the escape has been pressed. If the escape has been pressed, it's going to unlock the cursor. Then it's going to go ahead and see if the cursor is unlocked. If it isn't locked and we were locked, it's going to set was locked to false and unlock the cursor. Then, or if that's not the case, it's going to see if we are locked and we weren't locked, then it's going to set was locked to true, and we're going to lock the cursor. This is basically in case you alt tab and stuff, so you're able to re-lock the mouse every time you come out. So you can still alt tab to another window, or alt tab and go to another part of your web browser, come back, click, and it'll reset itself, so it'll lock the cursor.
No, I just have a question on line 12, where if you detect that escape has been hit and we're right there actually setting lock cursor to false, would it possibly be better if we made a call to unlock cursor, and one for readability, just because if it's been escaped, it's just.
Well, we could. It just saves. Also, it just saves a method call.
Well, here's the thing: is later in time, if for whatever reason you need it to add some more functionality, maybe something dealing with a mouse cursor graphic, or who knows.
Okay.
This way, you don't have to put code in two places.
Not a problem.
Okay, I was just wondering.
So we've got that in place, game manager's in place. If we jump back into our game, now this one, I don't know how well it'll do, but I'll try it. So we'll hit play. Now here's our game window. You can see my mouse cursor. I'll slow it down because we're capturing if this is like 10 frames or something. So the moment I click inside, the mouse cursor goes away. So I'm moving. I'm now locked to the blue area of the screen. So no matter where I go, I'm moving my mouse like crazy. It's not going anywhere. But the moment I hit escape, my mouse comes back. So now I can go over here. Now, likewise, if I lock it and then I alt-tab to something else, I get my cursor back. And then I can go back and I still have my cursor back. But the moment I click back in, it's locked again and it's captured my mouse cursor. Very handy thing. And like I said, if you guys played any of the web games, most people don't implement this and it'll drive you nuts. So it's just one of the things that I want every demo I ever do to have that functionality.
Okay.
Which is why it is a feature in my demo framework. So with that, that is the base functionality that I have with my framework.
Yeah, because I would assume then when you're ready to test out what you've been playing with so far for generating terrain on the fly, then I take it what you're going to do is you're going to implement a demo, a terrain demo, which is going to be inheriting or implementing iDemo. And then back over here in Game Manager, you're going to be holding a reference to an iDemo. And then that reference you're going to call its awake, its start, its update, its on GUI, and etc.
And each one of these, yes.
Since you've now guaranteed that your demo is going to supply an implementation for each of those.
Right, but because I don't have one right now, actually I could do something just as a stand-in temporarily. I can go ahead and hit add, and I'll create a...
Well, go ahead and call it the, since we know that we're going to go right into that video as our next one, go ahead and just make a very big, just terrain demo. It doesn't have to have any functionality in it.
Okay, no problem.
It'll just implement what it needs to.
So we'll just implement the demos folder, and this goes under code base.
Back
it did it
into
again.
the same problem.
Yeah, let's see. Last time I do it and create my folders inside, I knew there was something wrong with doing that. All right, so
just go ahead and close Visual Studio real quick.
I'm building it. I'm going to close it. Go back into Unity. Demos, delete it, go away.
And then just go ahead and resync it just to be on the safe side. Just for those of you out there that are using Visual Studio 2010, yes, you can just double click and sometimes it syncs just fine. I have made it such a habit to right click and sync first just because it doesn't always work for me.
And this is why I always create my folders in Visual Studio. Today's just flush it out. And it's like,
Well,
I flushed it out too far.
Yeah,
it was my own fault. I admit that part. Yeah,
I was just, just so you didn't have to say file, new project. But okay, so back in here. So now go ahead and create your...
Try it again. Add folder. Demos. All right. Yay, it worked. All right. Hold on. What was that hotkey? Control-Shift, insert. Class.
Okay.
Yeah, Control-Alt. I said Control-Shift and hit Control-Alt. I know.
You figured it out.
So I'm going to start with a terrain demo. All right. Now, this needs to implement the iDemo interface. Now, Alt-Enter so I can...
And we'll go ahead and fix the namespace since you're starting it off code base.
Yep.
Cool.
So, and irrelevant is just the way Visual Studio works to say that that part of the path is irrelevant and it makes it a library by default. It's just how they build out their project. So now, see what kind. Terrain demos implement interface members. Wow, look at that. That must be hard. Hold on. I think there's something that we can do about that. All right. Let's see. One has to love ReSharper. So let's go ahead and clean up some stuff.
Okay, so now that you've at least implemented empty methods, Now you can go ahead and finish
Go
up
back to
the
Game Manager.
Game Manager.
Now the nice thing with doing this, I can do a couple of different things. If I wanted to make a list of different demos and run all of the lists, I could do that. Or I could specify just a couple and make a new member for each one, or a property for a new each one. Because right now I only have the single demo, all I'm going to do is make a public, and I'm going to make this one a static because I only want one copy of this demo. And this is going to be the terrain demo. And is it going to pull it up? No, not yet. So go ahead and implement that terrain demo. I'm going to call this terrain demo, and this is just going to be a property. So get set. And you know, I really don't want anybody else to be able to set this but me. So I'll set that to private. So now inside of Awake, what I want to do is take my terrain demo. I'm going to make a new one, which allows me to then call each of the appropriate methods inside of it. Now, this may seem like being redundant, going the long way, but this allows me to make sure that this happens when I want it to.
Yay, we're in our very first R&D one, and I warned people that we could have our own arguments and all this fun stuff. That's just par for course. But I wouldn't call it terrain demo. I would say public static iDemo and then just call it demo.
What's that?
I would change that to an iDemo.
Like this?
And then make sure, there we go. And then instead of calling it terrain demo, just call it demo.
Like that?
Yep, and now change your two terrain demos up underneath on the left-hand side. All right, there you go. That way, the only reason I'm suggesting this is then let's say that you do the terrain demo and we're looking at that, it's like pretty cool, and then you want to do a sound demo or something else. All you do, since obviously all of these demos have to implement iDemo, all you do is you just go into the Awake and simply change out what it is you are you're creating. Otherwise, if you use terrain demo all over the place, then you would have just needed to have done a rename on everything, and this just keeps it all generic.
I knew there was a reason I kept you around.
Yeah. I make good coffee. Speaking of which, that does sound good right about now.
We'll do that between videos.
Now this acts like a giant pass-through. For those of you out there that may be wondering, once again, you know, why is Lee doing something like this? But it is convenient. Lee has the ability to come in here and halt, and you know, here's an example. Or whatever. But basically he can halt if he needed to the update being called on any sort of R&D feature that he's testing.
Right, so basically if I had some sort of flag and that flag's not set, then I can say, hey, don't do the updates because that hasn't been initialized yet. So
it may not become apparent right now. Again, Lee's given a very, very basic example, but later on when we get into some of the more complex stuff, this becomes important.
So yeah, it also helps, you know, like you said, if I have a whole bunch of demos in here and I just want to change them out, or if we implement a feature that's a menu system and we can just go through and go, oh, instead I can hand you one project, go, okay, here's everything I've been working on. You go, oh yeah, run the train demo. Oh, look at the spellcast demo, and you can run one at a time.
Yep.
All from one framework, and I don't have to send you 5 different projects.
Yep. Okay, very cool. So, well, not only that, you know, you'll end up, I'm sure of this, once the sound system gets fleshed out from some of the stuff we were playing with in the tech demo, it'll end up just becoming a feature in here, so then we can take advantage of that with any system that we're working on. We'll just have access to our sound manager and be able to utilize its functionality. So, okay, very cool. Now that you've got all that set up, that allows us in the next video to really just get started with talking about what you've played with so far with the terrain stuff.
Right.
So that's going to wrap up this video. Again, the idea of this video, and remember, you guys out there can always fast forward through some of these things that you find are relevant to you. I would like for us to be able to capture as many of these coding sessions as we possibly can. So that's exactly what we're doing. But you guys can always just fast forward or just not watch ones that are not relevant to you.
Right, and also this isn't the only way to go about doing things. If you've got other ideas, feel free. I mean, go ahead, put it in the forums and let us know what you think.
Oh well, absolutely. Well, I'm not even going to say that. The bottom line is we're just going to code forward the way we want to code forward, and this does work out well. It's already proven itself in the MMO tech demo. Each time you were testing new spells, I mean, I know for me that was a very big area because you had access to sounds and you had a lot of the things that you needed access to, the effects system, etc. And then you were able to go in there, and the character as well was in there, but without all of the overhead of the massive MMO code base.
Well, and it was really nice when you took the server down because you were working on that code. I could still keep rolling along with what I was doing because it didn't rely on it.
Yeah, absolutely. You just hit run, your player dropped into the world, and then you could test out whatever functionality you were working on. But anyways, again, that's all this is for. So that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks a lot, guys.